For the first time in a long time, I wake up slowly. I open my eyes without dread. I let the day greet me instead of bracing for it. It's a kind of peace I didn't know I was missing, one that comes from being present, from living on my own terms, and finally allowing myself to just be. I left the US to find ease, not just physical comfort, but a deeper sense of peace that I couldn't seem to access in the pace, pressure, and noise of everyday American life. I was craving a slower rhythm, something softer and more intentional. I needed space to breathe, to reconnect with myself, and to live without constant anxiety and stress. I always had a deep desire to solo travel, but for years fear held me back. And not just my own, but the voices of others too. The warnings, the doubts, the what ifs that echoed louder than my curiosity. So it remained a quiet fantasy. I often wondered what else was out there. Was I truly as depressed as I felt, or just worn down by a life that never quite felt like mine? Last year in September, I found out that I had an ovarian cyst. Most ovarian cysts are pretty small, somewhere between 1 and 6 centimeters, and in many cases, doctors simply monitor them, hoping they dissolve on their own. But mine was different. Mine was 19 centimeters. To make things even more serious, part of the cyst was solid, and my doctor was concerned it could be cancerous. It was a terrifying possibility, one I hadn't prepared for. But in a strange way, it also brought clarity. The pain, the extreme bloating, the heaviness I had been carrying in my body for months suddenly all made sense. That diagnosis cracked something open in me. It was like a mirror had been held up to my life and I couldn't look away anymore. I began to understand the way I was living, the way I was treating my body, ignoring its signals, pushing through the discomfort. It all had real consequences. So I started paying attention to my body, to my energy, to my spirit. I quit my job, became a certified nutritionist, found a freelance position that gave me the freedom to travel, and started designing again. I moved to NYC to be a designer and studied at Parsons, but left school to work. Creativity felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. I started my brand during the pandemic, but stopped when the world returned to normal. Looking back, I realized something important. I shouldn't have to rely on a global pandemic to feel allowed to slow down. That was a very dark time for the world, but the only time when I personally felt comfortable with rest and ease. Rest, creativity, and joy are not luxuries. They're necessary. They're part of who I am. Lately, I've been reconnecting with the process of nourishing myself. Home-cooked meals feel like self-care, and making my plates colorful feels very creative, like an art project. This kind of meal reminds me that wellness doesn't have to be complicated, just colorful, intentional, and full of care. For so long, I was caught in survival mode, hustling, striving, constantly trying to prove myself in a system that never truly felt like mine. The rat race demanded so much of me, but gave so little back. Some days still feel uncertain. Healing and rebuilding aren't always graceful or clear. But I've made a promise to myself. I'm not going back to the version of me that settled for exhaustion. I'm here to live softer, slower, more rooted in my purpose. And that finally feels like enough.